11 o'clock on your Monday morning. Welcome in. Reaction Monday rolling along on the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler Head, Wes Mitchell, Chris Clark. Guys, we were wrong. We all predicted a Kentucky win on Saturday, and thankfully we're here on Monday morning talking about the opposite outcome. Carolina, not only a win, a very convincing 25-point victory that sent the entire stadium home early on Saturday.
Sent them in search of a basketball game to watch,
Hey,
I like to think.
Midnight Madness a month and a half away.
That thing was empty.
It was.
Did you see the KSR video from outside the stadium?
Where they're interviewing the fans leaving?
When the game was still going on.
Yeah,
Turn your mic on, Chris.
It is on.
Okay.
It's on according to my...
Oh, hold on. I think I might need to turn Chris's mic up in there.
Can everybody hear Chris?
Let's try this one more time.
I'll use a different one.
Nope.
Work either. I'll use this
There
one.
we go. All right. Anyway.
let me
I'm being censored.
let me just review the film.
They're trying to
Yeah,
silence you.
Review the film. That was not Chris's fault.
Not my fault.
Tyler likes to call people out for not.
I know. Turn your
using
mic on. Light the little
Turn your mic
buttons
on,
are
you
lighting
idiot.
up like on vacation. The little button's not lighting up.
When I was doing StreamYard, you know, my mic messes up sometimes. He's like, "You're muted." Like, no, I'm not. It's a equipment
God, Tyler.
malfunction.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah,
Yes,
that
anyways.
KSR, what I was trying to say before I was censored by the KSR people, I think, had something to do with that. They didn't want me to call them out. They were filming that while the game was still going on.
That was 2 straight weeks that they've done their reaction before the game was over. So last
One
week,
bad, one
it was
good.
because of weather.
Yeah, of course.
But they literally were. Did you see the headline? It was like, Kentucky wins at least 31-0. I was like,
That's
wait,
pretty good.
But no, it's like, wait, what if Southern Miss could have scored?
Could have come back.
They could have scored at least. But then
Yeah.
it ended up working out because they didn't play again, I think. But this one, had Nicky Minwori had his house call yet at that point?
I've probably not. They'd seen enough. When
Perfect.
you don't have enough faith, for one, in your ability to block for your quarterback, but two, his ability to throw the ball, that you just run the ball, 18 times in a row at one point, and you can't do much with that either. Yeah, once Carolina got up 17-6, I think most of us probably felt pretty comfortable. That was enough of a margin to hang on to win.
Yeah, I think most normal football fans would feel good about that. Carolina fans probably have seen too much in their day. Seen a lot in my day. I think once it went to 24, you're like, dang, this thing's over in the third quarter.
Yeah.
And that Chris and I were texting at that point, actually. That probably gets lost in the shuffle a little bit, but for them to just salt the thing away, you know, I've seen a lot of Carolina teams have an opportunity to maybe put a game away like that, and they just sometimes make things difficult. That's something me and my friends always talk about. They're like huge Carolina fans, like, man, why we got to make this so hard on ourselves? They put the game away at that point, and then I don't know what Vandegrift was doing on the throw to Nick, because he threw it straight to Minwori. It was like he decided pre-snap, this is going to be open. It's where I'm going to throw the football. And there were 3 guys waiting on the football. But, there's a lot of directions you can go with this thing. It was, I think, a 3 phases of the game win for South Carolina. But to me, it all goes back to that defense. Like the overall ability to just disrupt things up front. And, we've heard about the waves of defenders, like wanting to have the kind of hockey line shifts and all those things, and being able to roll a bunch of guys out there. That's good in theory, but you have to go do it against opponents as well. And you never quite know what you have until you go see what you have against other teams. And we're going to find out even more coming up with some of these O-lines Carolina will face. But guys, 2 for 2 on both the kind of top end, like the starters making things happen, but also on your guys you're rolling in there. Chris, they're rolling guys in defensive line, edge, linebacker. I know Debo probably fights them every time. They try to take them off the field. But keeping guys fresh, letting them go get to the quarterback, and just being dominant up front. Kentucky did not have the guys to match Carolina's athleticism up front.
You know, we saw some 3-man fronts. We saw some 3-3-5. We also saw some 4-man throughout the game. So, you know, when you look at it that way, you've got either 6 or 7 guys playing between your linebackers and your defensive line. There's a couple beautiful stats within this game to look at on the snap count. Number one, 15 different defensive linemen or linebackers played 15 snaps or more. So, you know, Mo Kaba, by the way, awesome to see him get in the game after what he's been through. 3 major knee injuries. He played 5 snaps. So, really, you played 16 guys up front between edge, defensive tackle, and linebacker. And not just, they played, you know, some of those guys played 2 snaps when the game's over, basically. No. Monkel Goodwine played 15 snaps. You know, Fred J.R. Johnson played 18 snaps. You know, Gali Kamara played 23 snaps. And Shane Beamer talked about that going into after the ODU game, heading into the Kentucky game. He said, I want to get our guys in more. I want to rotate guys more. And we saw that. Like, Debo Williams only played 36 snaps in the game. That's awesome. You know, Tonka Hemingway led the D-line. He played 37 snaps. That's it. How many times have we looked at the snap counts after games in the past couple years? That linebacker played 78 snaps.
I mean, Debo was on the field for like 95% of the snaps last year.
Exactly. You know, that edge player played 67 snaps. You cut that in half, you're going to be more effective. I mean, how many plays did Dylan Stewart make? He played 25 snaps. You know, I mean, it's just
play on all 25 of them.
It's so much better, and the guys were obviously fresh. They were able to, I like the word you used, Wes, they threw waves at them. DeAndre Jules, 25 snaps, big impact.
Dude, he's pretty good now.
Yeah, he's real good.
He's pretty good.
So we're seeing that now. And so you could not have scripted a better, like, rotation and performance by the guys up front, and that really helped the secondary as well.
Well, Nick Barrett, not on the travel list.
Yeah.
JT Gear did not play. So
he started last week.
You hit those numbers knowing if something were to happen, if a guy gets nicked up, if a guy gets banged up, you can send other guys in that have played and played pretty well for you as well. So I think we're seeing exactly what they had in mind, what they had kind of planned to play out within that front. You know, there may be a game or two where, you know, the rotation has to be condensed, but certainly just from a season-long standpoint, being able to not put so much wear and tear on these guys' bodies, I think is going to go a long way for this team. I mean, the thing about Goodwine is he's in there, and I think it was, I don't know which announcer it was, but they were talking about, like, oh, now even the backups are in the backfield, and I'm like, technically true, but, like, that guy's in their rotation as well. Like, it's not – it was kind of funny. Even at the end of the game, Carolina has, like, Kelvin Hunter in it, nickel, and, you know, Julius Solomon in it, corner, Joseph Burns.
That was interesting.
Yeah, Joseph Burns in it, safety. And then it's like, well, the defensive tackles in right now are still, like, almost starter quality.
Yeah.
Just because their sort of sixth guys are – still very, very talented, like very good. And so that was really good to see. And this probably isn't worth putting any time on it, but for this to be the first, like, SEC versus SEC 16 team, ABC on primetime, how many names did they get wrong during that broadcast? I mean, good grief.
By the way, South Carolina in sole possession of the first place in the SEC, for those that aren't aware.
Technically true.
Inaugural leader of the 16-team SEC standings.
Mark that down in the history books.
That's right. And Kentucky inaugural last place.
Well, I feel like maybe I should double-check this before I even say it on air because of AI and edits and stuff like that. But there's apparently a projection at this point that has Carolina in the college football playoff.
Well, technically speaking, if we were to base things off of conference standings, Carolina is the first team in the SEC. So they would be in as of right now if the season were to end today.
So this is if it ended today.
If it ended today, yes. Let's not jump too far ahead, but yes, technically speaking, that would be a true statement.
Yeah, this is from Pat 40. Well, why does he have Carolina as an at-large then? Wouldn't SEC champion? So I think. I mean, I don't know what this projection is.
So what other SEC teams does he have?
He has Georgia as the SEC champion.
Okay, so
it's not if it ended today.
Well, I guess his aren't going off the automatics. Then he thinks highly enough of South Carolina in general to put them in.
He also has Vandy in there, so
okay,
there is that.
Well,
I don't know what I'm looking at.
Is he just being tongue in cheek? Like after 2 weeks, here's what the playoff would be, based on what we've seen. Because Vanderbilt shut out Alcorn State on Saturday. They shut off so many fireworks they ran out for the end of the game. So props to them.
That's like South Carolina against Tennessee. Ran out of fireworks. Scored so much. Yeah, 55-0 for Vandy.
After beating Virginia Tech last week. The Vandy game's...
Dude,
that game is looking tricky.
A quarterback is a problem.
Just saying.
That's got to be tongue-in-cheek, Wes.
It has to
Vandy
be.
in the playoff.
How the Dash would send the playoff if today were Selection Sunday. As usual, this is based on actual results to date, not preseason rankings or conjecture. If your team hasn't played anyone yet, you're not getting in this bracket.
Yeah, so that's why Ole Miss and Missouri aren't in here.
Not played anybody.
Vanderbilt's only beaten Virginia Tech.
Still, somebody.
Yeah.
Power 4.
True.
It's better
South Carolina's only beaten Kentucky.
True.
That was supposed to be a Kentucky shot, but whatever.
It worked.
Anyway, so Pat 40 is doing what I hope Gamecock fans don't do. Like, I don't want to ride the roller coaster, y'all.
Take it 1 week at a time.
Yes. We went from his team ain't gonna win 2 games to y'all know how hyped up this weekend is gonna be.
Well, and Beamer after the game on Saturday made it a point not only in his on the field interview, but his presser as well, saying, there's a lot of lazy narratives around this team this week, and I understand what he's trying to say. We weren't wrong for being concerned going into this game. We had a 1-game sample size of this new team on all fronts from a year ago that didn't look great offensively, that worried us against a Kentucky team that did look pretty good offensively against Southern Miss in 35 minutes of action the week before. We weren't wrong to be worried about this.
Well, no, and I think, I would think that reaction is to the people that were saying you're going to win 2 games off of 1 season. I mean, we sat here and said you cannot punt on the season after 1 game. Like, I think there's a big difference between saying South Carolina has to play better to beat Kentucky, which was the God's honest truth. And they did.
Yeah.
Versus saying, oh, this is over, fire this guy, fire that guy, the whole season is done. That is, I believe, what I think you would have a problem with if you're the head coach. Like, there's a difference between analyzing the game and saying it was not a pretty game versus saying, well, the season is done for.
Yeah, it's kind of like, South Carolina loses a game in the past and they go play a really good opponent the next week. It's totally fair to say, well, I don't think they're going to win this week, or they've got to play a lot better. Same token, you can't take this game and start a "We Want Bama" chant, after this weekend, right?
Get them in a couple weeks regardless.
We'll see that. But I mean, you got to take it for what it is. You can see the growth, you can see the progress. What does it mean even next week? We'll see.
Reaction Monday continues to roll on. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Talk about Lenore Sellers, his performance coming up next here on The Game.
All right, lots of great college football action already this season, but the good news is we're only a couple weeks in. Plenty more to follow, whether it's South Carolina or the SEC or really across the country. You want to make sure at your home that you have the very best setup to be able to keep up with everything, just like I have at my home. Integrated Media, Michael, Nathan, their team, integratedmediainc.com. They've been to my home. They've been to Wes Mitchell's home. They can come out to yours too, whether you're looking to create that man cave, upgrade your setup in your living room, your outdoor space, your patio, your screen porch, your kitchen, heck, wherever you watch the big game, they can do it for you. Sonos wireless speakers, sound bars, the very best equipment. You don't have to go to the big box stores. They can source the equipment for you and install it. IntegratedMediaInc.com or give them a call, 803-948-8327, Integrated Media.
Welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler, West, and Chris along with you on your Reaction Monday. Here on the game, that was the North Sellers talking about being a little more comfortable in his second career start. First time in conference play and on the road up there in Lexington. Went 11 for 15, 159 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 interception. Definitely looked a lot more comfortable than we saw him in week 1. And there were some overthrows. There were some times where he still looked like a redshirt freshman making a second career start, but you can steadily see him making those improvements from that game one against Old Dominion.
Yeah, I thought a big jump for Lenoris, just his mechanics, which usually, sometimes mechanics and technique, if somebody has bad mechanics, that's one thing, but sometimes your mechanics will show up that you're not comfortable, that you're just kind of, I think Dow said it as sped up. That's when your brain is processing so quickly or things are kind of happening so quickly that your physical sort of mechanics betray you a little bit. And I thought we saw that last week on some of those throws, sort of getting out on his front foot or leaning on his back foot. And this week, he stood in there, had his balance underneath him, and delivered some strikes. And, I thought that was impressive. I thought, the people that judged this kid off of 23 throws last week, including Desmond Howard, by the way, who basically said Sellers can't throw after one career start. I thought he put some of that to bed. Shout out to the guy who told us he was not an SEC quarterback after one game. But
wasn't on the live show this morning.
No, he was not.
No.
But, yeah, I think, man, not that it's going to necessarily all be linear, like you can expect improvement every single week. But I thought that whole thing, Chris, you had talked about where you said, Loggins said he doesn't make the same mistake twice. I think you could see that he very clearly went back, kind of assessed everything from last week, and made a huge step forward this week. Also, he just didn't let it bother him mentally. Like I think if he missed a few throws early on, there could have been that kind of here we go again thing. But no, he stood in there, made some throws, made some third down throws, made some scramble throws, pocket throws. It was really, I thought, a pretty dynamic showing, all things considered. Also, you got to remember that he missed a couple of drives with the injury as well.
Yeah, I think you saw growth from Sellers from game one to game two, but even just within the game itself, I think he played better in the second half than in the first. And a few different reasons for that, I think. I do think he was more aggressive throughout the game. I think we saw Sellers say, I'm going to stand in here and throw the football. He obviously had the ball security issues. That will be one of the next steps here of, Beamer mentioned it after the game. One of them was on a tight end missing a block. The other one, the quarterback's got to get rid of it faster. And watching it back, I think that's a pretty accurate assessment. He'll get better at those things. This was his first road SEC test. We talked about that a ton going in. But the cool thing is you saw Sellers grow in how he played. But I think first half he had some good and some bad, had some struggles. Played, I thought, even better in the second half. There's a couple plays that really, to me, illustrated it. One was you had a couple very high leverage third down situations. Not just third downs, third and longs. You had a 3rd and 14. He gets a blitz. Rocket Sanders picks up one. Lenoris has good pocket presence, just rolls to his left, finds a wide open Mazio Bennett first down. Next play, you end up scoring. You also had a 3rd and 11 where he stepped up, double clutch, threw a strike to Jared Brown right past the sticks for another big first down. And so I think that the staff did a better job in the second half of putting him in some situations as well that helped him out. But we've seen him grow from his first snap to his last snap in game 2 against Kentucky, and you have to leave that room for young players, particularly at the most difficult position on the field at quarterback.
And that's what stuck out to me. You mentioned that the Bennett throw where, again, had the guy bearing down on him. He kept his eyes downfield and didn't just cut and run, which is something he did a lot last week. Only, when you count the sacks, only 4 designed quarterback runs for him on the game on Saturday compared to the 22 that he had last week. He was just a lot more patient, a lot more, again, confident in waiting for things to develop, making those throws a little bit farther downfield that we didn't see him do as much last week, which, again, is a big sign of progress from one week to the other.
Yeah, and I thought they were going to have to run him to win this game. They ended up not having to, which I think is a huge blessing for them, not having to let him take those hits, especially after he did get hit and was a little bit banged up on his hip, it looked like. So, I think for them to be able to go win the game, have some second half success running the ball, get him out of the pocket and throw the ball around a little bit, that was great to see. And that's always been a strength of his. I think you look back to high school, keeping your eyes downfield, we're seeing him already kind of be the player, like be himself, be who he is as a player. And, he just did not look like himself in week one to most of what we expect from him from what you saw out of high school. So I think seeing that, great sign. And, man, let's credit the staff too. Like you maybe did not love the game plan in week one. I think in a lot of ways that might be fair. That was a really good game plan in terms of scheming up some concepts, particularly against what you were going to see from Kentucky, and having the guys well prepared to go run them. That little wrinkle on the first touchdown pass where you kind of do a simulated fake and then roll him back the other way. You overloaded the zone on that side by using motion. They did a great job of using motion to overload Kentucky's zones and give Sellers some windows to throw into. And you may look at that and say, oh, it's a busted coverage, but it was a busted coverage because of the concept they ran against that defense. So that was a great design. It was a great design on the touchdown pass to Joshua Simon as well. And Sellers, to his credit, hit the wide open man on the first touchdown and then put the ball, it was an open guy, but put the ball in a window and put it away from the defender as well.
Continue to dive into what happened on Saturday with South Carolina walking out of Lexington with a 25-point victory over Kentucky as Reaction Monday rolls along on the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs here on the game.
Wes,
What up?
current power ranking for Firehouse Subs. What's number one?
Brisket add bacon.
Golly, that one has been for a while.
It's a mainstay.
It was the New York Steamer for a while.
It's a mainstay.
Yeah, I think that one's going to be tough to unseat. So Wes's current brisket add bacon, that one is good. I'm going to have to stay, like, the classic is the Steamer. Tyler, I think, is still on TBR.
He's TBR
Correct.
all the way.
Okay,
Yep.
Team TBR. There's a new one, guys. We got to have it the other day out at Main Street. It's the Captain's Club, the Firehouse Captain's Club. It's got the signature Captain Sorensen's hot sauce, the brand new Firehouse Hero sauce, but also oven roasted chicken, melted pepper jack, crushed red pepper flakes, crispy bacon, and lettuce, tomato, and onions. Ton going on there. You can get that or any of your Firehouse Subs favorites at the 14 different Midlands locations. Go to firehousesubs.com, use the Rapid Rescue or the Firehouse Subs app.
Welcome back in. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler Head, Wes Mitchell, Chris Clark along with you. That was TJ Sanders talking Saturday after the game about getting off the ball fast. And look, there's a lot to unpack from this game that is going to take us into tomorrow. But, we're 33 minutes in, and we haven't even talked a whole lot about the defense, but a incredible performance by them. Defensive front, another great game. Dylan Stewart looking like the freak that he's been advertised to be and continues to gain national attention for some of the plays that he made. That triple team where he didn't get the sack on Vandegrift, but essentially had him in the grass before he threw the ball away. Just continued to show how great of a player he really is on Saturday.
Yeah, he's just a special talent. That much is obvious. And, you're already at the point where 2 games in, you're just wondering, like, how high can this thing go in terms of this kid's potential? You already got NFL sources saying, hey, this guy's a first-round talent. And I really don't think that's kind of early season hyperbole. Like, when you look at what he's done so far, is he going to be able to dominate every game he plays in? Of course not. But when you're talking about upside and potential and what he could be, seeing what he was doing already as a true freshman, like it is special. And I mean, I have a no Clowney rule, which means you can't compare defensive ends to Jadeveon Clowney. Dylan Stewart is on the verge of
might have to break that rule,
of making me break that rule. And I think, and again, it's not exaggeration. Like, he's been just that good so far. And it also helps that he's got some teammates that are back there wrecking shop as well. We knew Kyle Kennard was going to be a solid pickup for South Carolina, but he has been outstanding. I think working with Sterling Lucas has been really good for him as well. One thing they talked about, they saw in film review with Kennard, was that he won a lot of battles up front at Georgia Tech, but just didn't quite finish the plays off. And so I think he's not only winning battles up front, he's getting to the QB. There was one play where they literally were fighting to see who would get to be the forced fumble guy. Like, both guys were hitting the football at the same time. And then let's not forget about TJ Sanders in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy to forget sometimes just how good TJ is when he's playing at his highest level. And, I think if you can continue to get a little more consistency out of TJ, like when he is on, this dude is special as well. So you can't deal with all those guys at once, I think is part of it. And then I thought Clayton White did a fantastic job of mixing things up. For the most part, did he have to blitz a ton? No, but adding on rushers, whether it's linebackers or whether it's a cornerback and Vakari Swain coming off the edge, that keeps them on their toes a little bit in terms of sorting out their pass protection, who has who, which I think allows them to continue. If you're Carolina, you want to just get back to that 4-man rush and let those 4 guys feast. But being willing to blitz puts them in a situation where they have to mentally sort it out every time as well.
Yeah, I mean, they just, again, they threw waves at them. And I think Brian Thomas Jr., he made some things happen. He drew a holding penalty.
He's underrated, I think.
That wiped out a big play. Yeah, and I think, like, not only are these guys big, strong, fast, like athletically they look the part. They look very technically sound. So I think you give Sterling Lucas a ton of credit. The area, Wes, where I'm with you on the Clowney thing. How many times? Well, Carolina recruits like a highly touted D lineman. Is that guy as good as Clowney? It's like, no.
You don't even have to watch the guy. You just blindly could be like, no.
Yeah, no, he's not. But I will say, I think technically Dylan Stewart is even more advanced as a freshman. From a technical standpoint, a lot of what Clowney did is there's just this guy, like he was just uncannily fast, strong. Remember they did that thing where they measured his strike strength.
Is that a sports science?
Yeah, it was like a sports science thing. But they did it at USC, and it was so far above everybody else as a young guy. It was just natural. Like, Clowney wasn't a big weight room guy, We'll go grind. Like, he was just like, hey, guys, I'm here, and we'll play ball. And he just did things athletically. Dylan Stewart has a ton of athletic ability, but I have been, honestly, surprised even by just how technically sound he looks. When you go all these clips that are going around that are going viral, he's got counters, he's got the ghost move, and he's stronger than you would think. He's got some of that natural strength. So it's been awesome to watch. Early preview, South Carolina gets a big challenge this week with LSU, Will Campbell, who might be the best offensive tackle in the country. But they've just built a lot of depth up front, counting D-line and linebackers that they were able to throw at Kentucky and kind of wreaked havoc.
And it's one thing to have one dominant presence on one side of your defensive line, but when you have a Dylan Stewart on one side, who again is going to garner a lot of attention, that frees up Kyle Kennard on the other side. You can't account for both those guys and put three guys on both ends. You know what I mean? Like if you focus on one guy, the other guy's going to be free, not to mention what you're doing in the middle of the defense as well. DeAndre Jules had some good tackles on Saturday. Like all levels of this defense are playing really, really well right now.
Yeah, and again, I mean, this is a Sterling Luke stand show. Like, he's the man. He already got a raise, I think, this past offseason or the one before?
Probably both, but I can't quite remember. I think it's
we're gonna restructure this contract. When? Now. Like, he has been huge for what this defense is all about. And I do think you're going to start to see. So I was talking to a high school OC kind of just about some scheme things from Saturday, and we were talking about how Carolina had the wrinkle where they put the H-back in the A-gap on offense, and they were doing some things to kind of mess with Deion Walker in terms of getting him help or getting the O-line help against him. Well, and he brought up, hey, Dylan is going to start to see teams actually scheme for him. And we saw that with that, what was essentially a triple team, and he still fought through it. Now, Kentucky, again, it's a game of matchups. They struggle to match up athletically with their offensive front against, like, you can tell they want to be more of a passing team now with those three receivers, but they still were recruited to be that big blue wall or whatever they call it, where they want to be a run-based team. So you put those guys in a little bit of space on their O-line, and it is a struggle. But point being, teams are going to start, like LSU, I'm sure, will have a plan for Dylan Stewart. But if you're Carolina, that's where you hope, even against some of these better fronts that you're going to see, that's where you hope what we've seen so far continues to be the case in those one-on-one battles. Can TJ Sanders continue to win one-on-ones? Can Kyle Kennard, Brian Thomas Jr., can all those guys we're talking about continue to win those one-on-one battles against better opponents? Because if they do, then you're talking about, really, you're going to ride that all season long. Like, you're going to ride this pass rush all year long if they are as good as we think they might be.
And it's probably not, just to set the expectations. If it is, and this will be a bigger year than any of us think, it's probably not going to look as dominant as it looked against Kentucky a lot of weeks. I mean, if it does, wow. But can you get off the field 2 or 3 third downs? Where last year, the quarterback would have been standing back there eating a Firehouse sub, delivering a strike because the secondary can't cover somebody for 6 seconds, in the game of football. Can you use it this weekend, driving that forward? Can you get off the field on a couple third downs because your pass rush is causing problems? That is where the difference lies. It's made a huge difference for them this year, and I think we got like an outsized view of that on Saturday. It was the reason I think that South Carolina won that game. They made a lot of plays on special teams, on offense, yes, big plays. But the defensive line's dominance against that front, their inability to block them, that is what won the game.
The one area they did not make a touchdown was on special teams, which means the Loyola-Lisa Special Teams Touchdown Contest rolls on to another week. $300 going to be up for grabs this weekend against LSU. Go online to 1075thegame.com and register for your chance to win the Loyola-Lisa Special Teams Touchdown Contest. We'll get to some of your phone calls as well as some more breakdown of what happened on Saturday between South Carolina and Kentucky. 31-6 victory for the Gamecocks. They improved to 2-0 on the 2024 season. It's the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs on Reaction Monday here on The Game. Welcome back in. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs on your Reaction Monday. That was the call. The Gamecocks Radio Network Saturday, as scoring got started for Carolina with Lenore Sellers finding Mazeo Bennett for that early touchdown. Again, first career touchdown for Mazeo Bennett there. And again, South Carolina goes on to pretty comfortable victory, 31-6 over Kentucky. It is Reaction Monday. That means you can weigh in on the Firehouse Subs text line and the Love Chevrolet phone lines. Let's go out to the phone lines. Alex wants to weigh in. Appreciate your call this morning, Alex. What's on your mind?
Yeah, we did great against Kentucky, but we always do great when people doubt us. As soon as people start talking about South Carolina's going nowhere, we do great. And Tennessee in 2022. But as soon as people start blowing us up, like they did after we won 3 or 4 games that year, went in and lost to Missouri. So I'm worried now that people are on our side, talking about how good we're going to do. I'm worried we might go into LSU and blow it up.
Appreciate your call there, Alex. And it is an interesting dynamic when you look at, Beamer's tenure here so far. When people get really down on this team, they have a way of going out the next week and looking like world beaters. I mean, you mentioned the Tennessee game a couple years ago, this past weekend against Kentucky, to where when nobody believes in them, they go out there and prove people wrong. But on the same clip, sometimes when the hype is a little too high, they go out there and let people down. So it's a weird kind of balance. But for this week at least, they once again prove that you can't just write them off after one game.
How much of this do you think South Carolina fans get more sort of up or down than other fan bases? Like if we were covering LSU or Alabama or whoever, like is it just a fan thing, or is it to a little bit of an extreme overall for South Carolina?
I think South Carolina fans have probably been wounded more in the past than other fan bases. But I think it's everywhere. Man, I mean, did you go over to the old KSR message board after the game?
I actually did.
They're talking about the buyout.
Great.
They went from playoff to buyout in a week.
Kind of enjoyed that.
That shows you the swing. I mean, I think it's everywhere.
Well, Carolina went from they're going to win 2 games to game day.
They went from buyout to playoff, apparently.
Yeah.
For Pat 40.
I mean, the passion, that's why we love college football, but man, it's a roller coaster. I agree with the caller. There is a sense of at some point, and probably not. Maybe it's impossible. Maybe we can just all agree after one game, look bad, let's take a deep breath. After a big win, which it was, you're not diminishing the win, but big picture, I mean, there's people literally charting out, man, now this team can go 10-2. Whew. Did you feel that way after week 1?
No.
You got to look at both games as a totality at this point.
Right.
There's still a lot of questions, and there's still a lot that has been answered as well. So is it as bad as what you felt like last Monday? Of course not. Is it as amazing as what you feel like this Monday? Of course not.
And it's really funny when you look at South Carolina's schedule, which, again, we know is very tough and spent the entire offseason talking about it. Like, man, Alabama played a tight game with South Florida on Saturday. Pulled away in the end, but it was still a tight game.
Oklahoma put up less than 300 yards of offense.
Exactly.
16-12
against a Houston team that got blown out by UNLV the week before.
Yeah.
Clemson looked bad against Georgia 2 weeks ago and then dominated App State on Saturday. So there's so many ebbs and flows. Notre Dame got beat by Northern Illinois. There's so many ebbs and flows early in the season. It's hard to exactly establish an identity for every single team this early on. And again, we don't even know the full identity of South Carolina just yet. We think it's going to be defense, but that could obviously change as the season goes along. So where we're sitting at right now is a good place to be. You're going up against a even tougher opponent this weekend at LSU that we'll spend plenty of time previewing as the week goes along. But for a 2-game sample size, again, things to work on, but sitting in an okay place right now.
Realistically, you wanted to go into Akron having, and not this is not your thought in that building over there, if you're the football team. If you're a fan on the outside, you're being realistic, you'd probably be pretty happy with going into that Akron game, having beaten ODU and then splitting Kentucky and LSU.
Yep.
You've done that now without even putting the pressure of possibly starting 0-2 in SEC play on the second game of that stretch. You've won the first. Now, I don't think you look at it like house money. I think you look at it like, hey, let's go win this one too, and then we can really start to talk. Because then you're staring at 4-0 in the face. So I think it's played out all things considered, it's played out in a really good way so far. You almost, did it help? Did it help Carolina this week that they did not play well in week 1? Does that get your attention in practice a little bit? I heard from 2 completely different people that they had an excellent week of practice last week. Now, that does not always mean you play well. It really doesn't. But heard that kind of just out of the blue, like, hey, team looked pretty good in practice this week. Did they maybe have their attention got by how things went in week 1 just a little bit? I don't know. That's speculation, but it's a long season. It's going to be ups and downs along the way. You really don't ever know what a team is until you get to the end and look back on the thing.
Yeah, we have more data, but not like the whole picture on South Carolina or anyone. And I'll go back to what Shane Beamer said in his Sunday teleconference last night. It's an exciting thing, actually, that they could get a good bit better, particularly on offense. You can't say they played great on offense against Kentucky. They made some big-time explosive plays. They held onto the ball when the ball was in danger. But they didn't play all that great. Can you get a little bit better? Can your receiver core, can your offensive line, tight ends, quarterback, can you get a little bit better heading into the LSU game? You'll need to win, I think, but that's still on the table. I don't think this offense is a finished product. It's not going to be a juggernaut, but can it get a little bit better?
Plenty more to react to coming up tomorrow, as well as the rest of the day rolling along. It is Reaction Monday. Carolina picking up the 31-6 victory over Kentucky on Saturday. It's been the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs here on the game.
All right, guys, we were just out at Goal Line Framing a couple of weeks ago. Guess what? We'll be back. Come and see us this Thursday over at Goal Line Framing, 511 12th Street, West Columbia.